Oh, how I hate this Windows. I'm sure almost every one of you who has a Windows PC has said something along those lines to yourself when encountering issues and bugs while working at your PC. But perhaps you don't even know how diverse the nature of the Windows bugs is, and today we will talk about the disadvantages of Windows 10 and 11 and how to deal with them. This is MK, my name is Mikhail Kroshin, let's go. A Blue Screen of Death, or BSOD, is a horror story passed down from generation to generation. The screamer is often caused by a driver error, in other words, due to a failure in the intermediary program that communicates with the hardware. Driver problems, especially if you have an old computer or laptop, is what Windows is known for. One of the funniest things is when, after installing Windows, you do not get a network adapter driver installed, and in order to download it, well, you got it, you need the internet. And that's when you start to understand people who keep their driver disks. Although I don't even have a CD-ROM. Still, the situation changes little over the years. Yes, with each release of the system, there are more and more drivers in the Windows database. But have you ever tried installing Windows on a modern laptop with an 11th gen Intel Core i7? This awesome feeling when the installer does not detect the SSD in your laptop. And it's not even a defect. It's just that Intel decided that all laptops users definitely can't live without a hot swap capability. And the fact that your laptop has only one M2 slot and it is hidden inside your laptop doesn't concern anyone. And you have to download the driver for the SSD from the laptop manufacturer's website, throw it on a flash drive along with the system and then install it. Or dig deep into the BIOS to disable the VMD controller. And this is just the tip of the iceberg for driver problems. I think many active PC users, after reinstalling Windows, observed a long list of unknown devices in the device manager, for which you have to search for drivers manually. Moreover, even if the system was able to install the driver, stable work of it is not exactly guaranteed. There is no need to go far for examples. Both Windows 10 and 11 install graphics cards drivers automatically. Only they can be 3 and even 5 years old. It is a fact that such drivers have been tested and they will definitely work stably with the system, but new games or graphics editors will surely have issues with such drivers, and you will have to go to the GPU manufacturer's website again and update the driver by hand. How convenient. So why bother when you have driver packs? And from that moment on, the lottery begins. How many checkboxes will you miss? And how many web browsers and third-party VPNs will be installed after launching such driver packs? On top of that, even antiviruses often demonstrate their contempt to such driver packs, which kinda tells you a lot about their reliability. And even if you break through all the start screens and click the Update All Drivers button, it is not yet time to celebrate. Many such utilities download formerly compatible drivers, so the lottery starts again. Will everything work after a reboot, or will you be surprised to find that something else doesn't work, or there's an error? So drivers have been and will be a headache for Windows users. Here you can even start to envy Mac users whose drivers are carefully integrated into the installer by Apple's software engineers, and unfortunately, even in the future, nothing will change for Windows. There are a ton of PC components manufacturers and far from everyone has their own websites, and even fewer upload updated drivers on them. I'm talking about you, Realtek. So this is a vicious circle, which will definitely not be broken in the nearest future. Do you know what else hasn't changed in Windows for decades? The look of the majority of the system utilities. And it would be fine if these were just some small programs intended for bearded admins, but no. Right-click on the Start menu, select the Disk Control panel, and travel back to the 90s. The task scheduler, resource monitoring, event viewer, and many other necessary system components, even in the new rounded-edge Windows 11, remain unchanged. And the cherry on the cake is the control panel. Last year was an anniversary. It had been 10 years since Microsoft has been trying to get rid of it, starting with Windows 8. However, the only thing they managed to do is confuse us. Half of the settings have been moved to the new parameters menu, while half remain in a control panel, and if you are not a computer guru, then you will have to look for the right setting in 2 places at once. Oh, and also some of the settings in the parameters menu redirect you to the control panel and vice versa. And at the moment, only Windows has so many antiquities. Neither the current Linux nor even macOS allow themselves to do this. At least, all the system utilities match the general style of the system and the time we live in. By the way, let's talk about interfaces. I think many users of modern laptops and monitors with high pixel density have noticed that some of the software looks blurred, and the problem goes away only when the scale is set to 100%. But in this case, you might need a magnifying glass in order to see anything. So we get a dilemma. It's either micro or soft. But there's a way out of the situation. You need to manually set the required scale of the interface in the parameters, even if you have it as a selection option. After that, log into the system and voila, the font will be clear everywhere and large enough in most programs. But why does it happen so? Because Microsoft, having given the display manufacturers freedom, got confused and screwed up. The thing is that PC screens have been nailed to 96 pixels per inch for centuries. In fact, this was quite enough somewhere before the beginning of the 2000s, until laptops and monitors with the pixel density of significantly over 100 dpi began to appear. As a result, Windows looked too small on them. The solution was to give users the ability to change the scale and give developers all the tools to adapt their software to different pixel densities. That's what Microsoft did in Windows XP. By the way, XP was my first adult Windows, so to say. Even now, I'm still experiencing some kind of warm feelings towards it, and the design of it looked so beautiful. Apparently, it matched the time well. That's when we needed driver disks, and in order to get a new game, I had to disconnect my hard drive and connect it to a friend's PC via SATA, get the game and go back home pondering whether it would start or not, whether I downloaded all the files or there was something else written in the system. That is why I never had my PC fully assembled. But we digressed a bit. Let's move on. So this whole thing started with XP. Some developers made everything properly, others didn't bother, some only defined some certain scales to be supported. As a result, in some cases, everything scaled correctly. In others, the text stretched like a picture and got blurred. But in some cases, it turned into a version for far-sighted people. Then Microsoft itself added fuel to the fire, by adding in Windows 8 various types of scaling. The idea was to make the program look equally good on different monitors with different DPI connected to the same PC. But this idea never reached completeness. You can actually see it through the Task Manager. Go to the Details tab and add the DPI column, after which it will become noticeable that the majority of programs do not know how to scale at all, which means that everything will be perfect only at 100% scale. And again, there is no guaranteed way to fix the situation. Same as in the case with drivers, and there cannot be, frankly, as there's too many different monitors and programs. And that's where macOS does not look much better either. It's even worse actually. This system has a dozen clearly defined screen sizes and resolutions for which you can optimize your software. And if you buy a non-standard monitor by Apple standards, for example a popular Full HD 24-inch solution, you will also encounter blurry fonts and icons. And that in all the software that there is, and not in just some separate programs. But actually, it should be noted that most of the above problems are tied mainly to software and hardware developers. And Microsoft doesn't really have anything to do with it. They provide all the tools to make the software work well, but not everyone uses those tools. Still, Microsoft's own software is far from perfect either. And I'm talking about updates. After Microsoft decreased their tester personnel just before the release of Windows 10, the quality of updates went downhill as expected. Apparently, Microsoft thought that ordinary users will be happy to become their testers, but for some reason they chose to work at their PCs rather than install betas and help Microsoft fix their bugs. Very surprising, huh? As a result, almost every week there are news that a Windows 10 update broke something again, and a bug fix which solves the problem breaks something else. And this quickly led to the fact that people are not particularly eager to update their system, preferring to stay on older builds with disabled updates. And also to the fact that Windows 11 failed. Not only does it have enormous system requirements that even the developers violate, but there are also many more issues. Of course, some of you will point out that Windows 10 and even 11 can run on a potato PC from 2006. Over the past 15 years, so much hardware has been released that it's simply physically impossible to make everything work stably on any device, so it will not be possible to avoid bugs. But as practice shows, not only Microsoft has problems with updates. Take Apple with their macOS, which only works on a couple of dozen well-defined configurations, and even that doesn't help. At times, updates massively break MacBooks. But still, in the case of Microsoft, this issue is of a massive scale. Why is everything so bad? One of the important reasons is that Microsoft gives users freedom. Too much freedom. It is necessary to prohibit users from openly praising other systems, openly supporting disabling the update function, and changing folder names. Surprisingly, this is the case when too much freedom is more of a bad thing. Most of us are using Windows as administrators. It gives us unlimited power. We can accidentally delete a system file or install any registry cleaner that will do it for us. And I'm not even talking about all sorts of status bars, animated desktops, which also take root in the system deeper than needed. So it turns out that Windows can be seriously damaged in just a couple of clicks. Therefore, the Linux approach, which constantly requires a password for root access, and even more so macOS, where the system files are inaccessible at all, in this case proves to be a better solution. Yes, in this case, it's more difficult to customize the system, but if functionality is more important to you than cosmetics, then this approach turns out to be much more stable in the long run. And in general, for the most part, these optimizers and cleaners do not bring any benefit on the table. The registry has a tree-like structure, so the empty branches left after removing programs will take a couple of kilobytes of memory at most, and will not slow down your system in any way. Windows has a built-in disk cleaner that allows you to safely remove trash, unlike CCleaner, which at best, if configured incorrectly, will log you out of the websites in Google Chrome. And I remember when a friend of mine checked all the boxes in this CCleaner and cleaned everything up to the system startup. So it's not worth changing an extra couple of 100 megabytes on the disk for stability. You can learn more about all sorts of registry cleaners and third-party antiviruses in our previous video called The Most Popular Myths About Windows. The link is in the description. But still, there are such situations when utilities that go deep into the system can actually help. The thing is that Windows is a very curious system. Her middle name is Telemetry. Judge for yourself. The first builds of Windows would even take screenshots at random time and relay them to Microsoft. Those screenshots could easily have your confidential data, nudes, and generally any compromising material, and Microsoft has collected many a ton of such stuff. Then, of course, under pressure, Microsoft allowed to partially disable the telemetry, but still, the system collects a lot of confidential data. Thus, if you are not fond of being spied upon, you just have to use third-party tools to disable it. And telemetry is not the only downside which older versions of Windows didn't have. Immediately after installing Windows 10, you will find a bunch of ads in your system, which you will have to remove manually. On top of that, Microsoft in their Windows, for which, by the way, you have to pay, advertises its own products, such as, for example, Microsoft Edge browser or Office, and they do that in the search results or file explorer. They are literally forcing you to use their own software, namely Microsoft Edge browser and Bing search engine. Any internet search query or help will be opened in Edge, even if you have a different browser set as default. On top of that, Windows 10 will tell you right on the main settings page that you have problems browsing the internet, and offer you to fix it by installing Edge as a default browser. And the antitrust authorities are silent about it. Apparently, they are afraid that they will be forced to use Linux. At the same time, Microsoft is well aware that security is not their strong suit, so in the latest revisions of Windows 10 and 11, they added a feature that slows down the system by 20 to 30%. The thing is that now it has such a security feature as core isolation. And this feature, in exchange for some extra security, will cut down performance. The thing is, an ordinary user will hardly ever need this function, well, unless the FBI is after you for hacking into the Pentagon or something. Nonetheless, isolation can be enabled on a newly purchased PC or laptop, so it is worth making sure that it's not. In general, Windows has a ton of problems, and a good half of them are only characteristic to this OS, and are completely absent in either Linux or Mac OS. And it's not surprising. Microsoft controls about 90% of all desktops. I'm sure you have something else to add to this list. For example, it really pisses me off that the standard video player can't run, for example, HEVC format from iPhones, or some high-resolution movies downloaded from the internet. Generally, everyone has something to add to this list, and I would like you to write about it in the comments. This was MK. I'm waiting for you in the comments. My name is Mikhail Krashin. I'll see you later. Bye.